In a very small space of time, the city of Fort Worth, Texas, lost 3 community icons and patrons. 3 individuals committed to this city and its residents, committed to a larger worldview, and especially committed to leave this place better than they found it. They embodied a legacy that emboldened the arts, fostered rebirth of a city, and changed history. Ruth Carter Stevenson, synonymous with the Amon Carter Museum. Nancy Lee Bass, the namesake of Bass Performance Hall. And Van Cliburn, musical ambassador to the world and inspiration for an international piano competition. These are Fort Worth icons.
My mom's legacy, the legacy of Mrs. Bass, the legacy of Van Cliburn are indeed very strong. And for one community to have 3 individuals that impacted the community so strongly is unique.
My grandfather died in '57. In his will, he left provision for this museum to be established. And according to Mother's stories anyway, my uncle Amon told her that he had a newspaper to run, and so it was her job to do the museum. So she did. And she took it on, as she did most things in her life, with a passion and went after it and looked for excellence. Was always something Mother strove for in everything she did, and especially for this institution. And the original collection was my grandfather's collections of Remingtons and Russells, and that, as it stated in his will, was to house that collection. But it was to mainly, his interest was, growing up, he did not have access to something like this, and he wanted to make sure others did.
I think that my mom's passion for what she did throughout her life, as it pertains particularly to the art world, a lot of that was inherent to her. I think that she had a very keen eye that was developed over time, and again, she enjoyed beautiful things.
Maybe the first thing that comes to mind is that she was a trailblazer. She was adamant and ardent in her love of the arts and gardening. Those were the 2 passions of her life. Self-taught as far as, well, really in both areas, if you will, but very bright, determined, motivated, and knew what she wanted to do in the world.
Ruth was a kind-hearted, fiercely demanding individual. She had a sense of great graciousness in the possibilities of what could be done, but as in everything at this museum, she had exacting expectations about quality and excellence.
I think she was just driven to accomplish, again, what she thought was going to be important for the community, i.e. providing a museum for the community of Fort Worth, and also carrying out her father's wishes. Both of those were very strong incentives for her.
It is now one of the finest collections of American art, period, in this country, because the collection has expanded obviously well beyond the Remingtons and Russells, which were the core collection, but it is renowned as one of the finest institutions of American art in this country, and most of that is attributable to Mother's eye and things that were purchased under her aegis, and that there are nothing but masterworks on the wall, and she always demanded excellence in that field, not only in the paintings, but the sculpture, the photography, every facet of the institution. It obviously was always something to be extraordinarily proud of, and the older you get and the older I get and look back and see all of the accomplishments and what it has meant for this city, it obviously means that much more.
It was Ruth's vision as a collector, obviously with the public experience in mind, but it was really a collection of excellence that grew out of that purposeful sense of, I can make a difference by bringing the greatest American art here to Fort Worth that is available and that we can acquire. And that sense of purposefulness in that simple act, I think, is something that will, deeply resonate with the generations that follow.
You know, Van Cliburn was such a special human being, both from his contributions to the musical world and his love of the Fort Worth Symphony, but just as a person.
He's one of the kindest people I've ever known, one of the most generous, one of the warmest.
Van was almost the definition of a philanthropist, and it's not even about dollar signs with him, although he was very generous with his gifts in his lifetime to the symphony and to many other organizations. But it was his gift of his spirit and his time and his musicianship.
We have this wonderful organ in Fort Worth, which happens to be the largest organ in Texas and one of the largest and finest organs in the world. This organ cost $2.5 million. That was in the early 90s. That was a lot of money. But the church itself, church members, all the way from children to senior citizens who were on a limited income, made pledges over 3 years to pay for this organ. We decided to name it for Van's mother, Rilda B. O'Brien Cliburn, because of their interest in the church, because of their love for church music, and the fact that she had once been a church organist.
Van gave himself generously in many ways to the world. The competition, from the very beginning, Van insisted that it not be a cash prize for the winners, but that tour engagements be included along with the cash prizes. And the Van Cliburn Piano Competition has continued that and will continue that. And it is important that these musicians be able to reach new audiences, travel to the rural communities, to the schools, to the community centers, as Van did through his lifetime and how he performed everywhere, not just on a concert stage.
I think it would be very difficult to quantify or to even describe it. The legacy that Van has left to Fort Worth and to the symphony and to the world of music is infinite. In fact, it really is my opinion, and I'm sure many others share it, that there has been no other public figure or private figure in the world who has left such an imprint. And I think we were just very blessed in Fort Worth that he just happened to be one of ours.
Nancy Lee Bass was the kind of woman that the rest of us greatly admired for all the right reasons.
Nancy Lee has been the matriarch of the family. She and Perry and their sons have all combined their efforts, their energies, their resources to make this great city even better. They've done so because they've been blessed.
It was on the occasion of their 50th wedding anniversary that I think they showed the most remarkable commitment I've ever seen. Perry Bass asked Nancy Lee what she would like for her wedding anniversary. And I can only imagine that in his mind, he was expecting her to say she'd like a new pair of diamond earrings, or perhaps a yellow diamond. She loved yellow diamonds. Or maybe a trip to Paris. But when she said she wanted to give away $50 million, don't you know that took his breath? In fact, I was getting dressed, watching the news, as I always did before going to the office, and all of a sudden I heard this talk about Nancy Lee and Perry Bass. So I stopped to listen, and when they said they were giving away $50 million. So I think that alone is an extraordinary gift to the symphony, but just multiply that times 50 and think of the impact it had across the community.
That entire family has done so much to improve our city, to make it a place of quality of life that is the source of jealousy from every corner of this country and beyond.
The concert hall, which I understand Van, our beloved Van Cliburn, was the first to say, the hall must be named for Nancy Lee and Perry. The money was raised from the general community who were very, very generous in supporting the project. And in May of 1998, we opened the Nancy Lee and Perry R. Bass Performance Hall. I think there has been nothing that has had the artistic impact on the Fort Worth Symphony so much as having the hall.
If there's one thing that young people need to hear, it is that you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. And it is amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets credit for doing what. Those two lessons were learned early by those three individuals, by Nancy Lee, by Ruth, and by Van. And they lived those lessons and have set that example. And I encourage this generation of young people to learn those same lessons, to follow that example. Not just because it's the right thing to do for the right reason, but it's a Fort Worth way. Give back. Don't just take, but give back. Pay forward what has been done for you to give you those opportunities.